And good afternoon, and welcome to the magic episode of the OpenQuester. And this episode, I'm not going to whiffle on about what's coming up for OpenQuest, but instead we're going to look and have talk about one of the first things you should consider when you pick up the game, whether you're a player or a referee setting up the game, and that is magic and OpenQuest magic systems. And once again, I've invited Paul Mitchener, who's my editor, co-conspirator of OpenQuest, to chat on this one, as well as the editorial work and knowing the system inside and out. Paul has also used the system in anger to run his own campaigns of OpenQuest. He's a player in my current OpenQuest Thursdays game, and he's going to be using the system to create a Four Emperors historical game using OpenQuest. So he's got experience there. So that's quite a lot of ground, covering a quick sort of chat about all this. And I thought it just occurred to me when I was mulling over the pages of the lovely proof version. It's disappeared. There we go. There's the book. It's real. Ooh, this is a pod copy of it. So that's the final pod copy. So
I promise I've got words as well.
Yes. So I was mulling over that. Thought, what happens when you pick up the rules set? Well, obviously, some of you will quite happily play the adventures that have been presented. There's one in the adventure in the main rulebook, and there's the quick start, which explains how magic works, and there's the setting, the Empire of Catan. So I think probably that's the best way to start. That's sort of like the default setting. I call it the example setting, which shows how OpenQuest's free magic system works. So yeah, they'll do it that way. So OpenQuest comes with three magic systems: personal magic, which is the magic of the characters that comes from them. They learn it from relatives or the old wise woman who lives. I was about to say lives in a hedge, because they're often known as hedge witches as well, or a bit of it from their local religions as well. So this is sort of very low level stuff. And then there's divine magic, which you learn at the local temple for the priests and the priestesses of various gods. And then finally, the last system is sorcery, which is basically sort of the source you learn from sorcerers who understand that reality is governed by magical laws, and they teach you how to manipulate those magical laws. So the default setting, the Empire of Catan, has all three magic systems represented, and it uses the character generation system. So you start off with about three magic spells, roughly, when you start off, which all are all to do with your sort of your character concept. So a warrior will have charms and blessings that enhance his combat skills, while a healer will have healing spells, and a woodswoman will have spells that allow them to call over beasts and detect traps and enemies. So depending on what your concept is, you'll have different magic spells personalized to you. So I think I quickly whizzed through the magic systems there, with the default. And you're currently playing in OpenQuest Thursday, which used that whole sort of character generation setting Catan.
I mean, what I really like about that, so any of the sort of shamanism type powers, that's of course joined into the common magic system. And you can eventually, if you want to, specialize and become a shaman.
Yeah.
And that's not actually something I've done before in a game, so it's nice to mess around with that.
Yeah, I didn't mention it as well. Each approach has different specialist casters. And for personal magic, you have the shaman. The shaman, everything is a spirit, and you start off by summoning a few spirits, like Paul's character does. What's is it? Is it healing and what's the other
Healing
one?
and fear. Healing
Fear.
and passion spirits, specifically fear spirits.
Yeah, it kind of like kind of came up with the idea that it's kind of a balance between good healing.
It's the balance, and I could also go, spirits, calm down.
Yeah, the fear spirits tend to get used a lot in interrogation.
Yeah, it's actually quite nasty, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't think he's a nice guy, really.
Well, it's better than the rest of the party going, oh, we failed our influence roll to get them to spill the beans. Where are the tickling sticks?
Yeah.
And at this point, and I said, well, they don't keep tickling sticks around here because they're not that sort of dwelling residents. So Paul calls in the fear spirit. Fear spirit takes over the person.
And they break down. That's the idea.
And yes, I've had a few interesting role-playing experiences, like a giant who was like, oh, I'm very sorry about everything, and so that's kind of like that's Paul's character's sort of magical sort of abilities at that stage, and at the moment the ways forward along the path, so to speak, is either to become a shaman. So we have been inquiries, is there any local shamans? Or the other one, which the other players are quite keen on, is what's called a wise. This is something that's new to OpenQuest 3. I have seen quite a lot of times that players do not want to engage with the magic systems apart from what they learn about the personal magic system. So they just keep on learning new spells, and there's nowhere for them really to go. There's no priest or sorcerer, because that priests are in divine magic, and sorcerers and the various types of sorcerers are obviously in sorcery. So there's no root of power. They just accumulate magic if they bother with it at all.
Yeah, although you can start off as an apprentice sorcerer, can't you?
Yeah, but that's why people are engaged with that. And I've had a few of that either. But I tend to find that players are a bit cagey. The reason why everybody gets a bit of basic magic stuff is to get them used to using magic. Detractors will say magic should be reserved for the magic casting classes. I want a sorcerer. I want a priest. I don't want everybody running about with magic. If that's okay, if you want to run your game of OpenQuest like that, fine. And I won't detract. I think you lose a bit of the powers and talent, sort of.
I think that's one of the things that I find really attractive about it. Actually, everyone's got a bit of magic, and of course, you mentioned, for example, the Future Cup Roman setting. Of course, everyone's. I mean, the historical time. It's awash with superstition. It's awash with ritual.
Yeah.
So of course, everyone's got a little bit of magic.
It's something.
But in RPG terms, of course they do.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Tudor and Stuart period in English history, which one of the reasons why I often wondered when did magic kind of die a death in this country, and the answer is it's when James I took over, and he sort of declared that if you're a witch, it's sentenced as death. And he wrote propaganda pamphlets warning about the evils of magic. And up to that point, you could go to the village priest and you could go, oh, my garden's looking a bit peaky. And you'd pay a couple of shillings, and he'd put a little prayer to Jesus, like make Mr. Smith's garden much nicer, roll it up and put it in the thatch of the church, and job done. Yeah. So, and it was only after James I who, from all accounts, because he grew up with his mother, Mary, Queen of Scots, being held hostage, basically, by Queen Elizabeth I. So he's in Scotland, and his dear mum's in England, and he wasn't sure at any point they could execute it, which eventually, of course, they did. And the only sort of information he got was all from all the court gossips, who also happened to be the astrologers, the divinators. So he grew up with a very, very poor opinion of witches and people who did magic, because of that sort of atmosphere. It's quite interesting, as I say. But the idea during Tudor times it is that when you went to see the doctor, not only would they sort of say, "Oh, I've got a bit of a sore throat," okay, well, put a frog down your throat, and things, wonderful things like that. So it was potions and alchemy and stuff. You'd have the horoscope. Doctors were also astrologers as well.
Have you ever read what was it? One of my favourite books of history on that era, Religion and the Decline of Magic.
No, I haven't.
Well, okay, you ought to.
Who's it
like
by?
You'd like it.
Right.
And another
another
point it makes is the difference between sort of Catholicism and Protestantism. You know, where
I'd imagine a lot
in the Catholic traditions, there's deliberate intervention with sort of, prayers to saints and so on. Whereas a certain fierce form of being Protestant, you can just say, no, it's God's will. You don't pray to interfere with that. It's God's will.
Yeah, I got a sense of that when I was reading up about the Anglo-Saxons and their saints.
Yeah.
I was interested, particularly my grandparents lived in Norfolk around Ely Cathedral, and there was an Anglo-Saxon saint. I think it was Saint Agatha or something like that, and she was the patron saint of healers, because she, for some reason, she got killed. They put her in the ground, and then she came back to life. And
that's luck. That's good.
and that was something. If you got in trouble, needed a bit of healing, you would pray to Saint Agatha, and that was how it worked. So this is sort of like, it's not just something that it's a traditional thing from, like, it's coming from sort of the game's roots in RuneQuest. That this is where we got the and legend, but it is something it isn't. This is when you're explaining to players. It is something that has precedence and sort of roots in the real world. But you can, if you really want, if that, just ignore the personal magic and have your specialist casters, right? And that's the difference. Yeah, divine and sorcery. Although you can start as an apprentice, as an initiate, a character generation. It is in the rules under a ready-made concept. It's there. You don't tend to start those two systems, because that's where it gets quite serious. You've got to have, like sorcery especially, you tend to put the experience points into growing the character in their magic, and a lot of players they want a bit of both.
Yeah, so I had one player who absolutely loved playing a sorcerer.
Yeah,
but yeah, you're right. It's not a typical thing.
And so that's sort of like this sort of experience. There is a fourth type of magic system, or a different magic system in the OpenQuest Companion that I'm currently putting together, and that's what I'm calling for one magic system. And basically, what I found that when I run convention games, the players, the idea that everybody has a bit of magic is a lot of things is to juggle with in a 3-hour game. So I say everybody's got a bit of magic. You've got 3 spells, and all the sort of the twiddly bits on personal magic, which are kind of based upon, get dialed back. All the variable magic becomes static, and you roll against your casting skill to see if the spell fires off, and there's no magic points. And if you fumble your roll on a D percentile, then you forget the spell for the rest of the day or the rest of the game session. So it's a very much more concise. I then pull in the magic that isn't duplicated from divine magic and sorcery. So it literally is, you could just play the game with this very simple magic system. Every company can have a bit of magic. Sorcerers and priests simply because want to play that simply are just characters that have lots more spells because they spend their growth, their advancement points on that. So that's in the companion. So I think that brings us neatly to, well, if you have the companion and you have the main rule book, and you're setting up your campaign. So I'll explain the default setting of Catan uses the default setup, but you don't have to do it that way. So again, call it on your experience, Paul, because if you confronted with OpenQuest, you've got 3 magic systems, plus there's other one as well, the one magic system.
So I'm thinking of, starting off my sort of, my new setting, I'd be looking at the book, I'd be thinking, okay, which of these magic systems do I want to use? You don't have to eat the whole cow, right? That's one of the things, you just take what you want. You might just take common magic, or you might say, okay, so again, what I'm considering for the Roman setting would be just common magic and divine magic. And I could witter on about how I can see that working and how it fits. Or again, you might have common magic or true initiates of the mysteries, and that's sorcerers.
Right. Yeah, I was just about to say how.
I can see that in some sort of very, I don't know, where magic's a very academic pursuit almost. I can see it in that sort of setting. I can picture a setting there. You're going to have magic universities, aren't you, rather than cults and things like that.
Yeah. I always think the sort of the Romans, and this is not something I've gone into great detail. It's like the Order of Hermes, and that's from Ars Magica. Reading that has its origins in the ancient world, and that's very much sorcery and certainly couched in the terms that all gods are just Zeus are a moon and various.
That's interesting how, of course, garbled that gets, and its sort of perceptions of the ancient world. It's all filtered down, and of course, you can make what's true and what's not true fit your conception of things there.
Yeah, I think more sort of Herodotus. Herodotus says that sort of like, so he goes to Egypt. Sorry, this is Herodotus, the father of the historians. He was Athenian,
so he travelled about. He listened to lots of travellers' stories from faraway places in the ancient world, and he recorded them and took them pretty literally.
And you could buy it's one of the Penguin classics, the World of Herodotus history, and they in the introduction of that they say that basically the histories was just him. Most of them are him talking after dinner, so he was doing it as an after dinner speaker. But he goes to Egypt and he basically says there that sort of he comes across their religion and he just says, oh, so and so is just Zeus, that's just Athena. So this is an intellectual one that all gods are just they pick up on the themes. Like, oh, I've gone off on a bit of a tangent there. But your fantasy world might work like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, the Romans were horrible for that because, of course, any of the records of, say, for example, the Gallic religion, big record you've got is, well, Caesar writing about invading it, which is a propaganda piece. And he says, oh, in this place they worshipped Hermes. Right. No, they didn't. They've worshipped another god who you've just identified with Hermes without saying anything about the original.
But it's for the crowd back home.
Yeah, absolutely. That's who it's for.
So, this is another thing as well. If you do get into the religious side, or you want to create your own religions of OpenQuest, and there's examples in the main rulebook. There's an example Pathan setting. But in the companion, there's going to be a list of, I call it the deity list, of generic gods and goddesses, or very low detail that you can take. They have the skills, they have the magic, and then you can sort of create your own deities out of that and your own Pathanons, or you could just start really small and get input from your players and then build up to sort of big, long.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, you don't have to do everything at once.
Yeah. So Because again, I played a certain other game, starts with an R, has runes in it, and certainly, we were always waiting for big long write-ups of the religions, and my favourite sort of phase of that game, simply for playability, was in its third edition, where you did have a whole a very quick list of all the gods and goddesses. Other Galantha fans are really like, no, I preferred it in second edition where we had full cult write-ups, but I kind of liked discovering things through play.
And you had the 14 or so in Cults of Prax or something, and that was it.
Yeah, I kind of like that level of detail, but it's the really big expanded ones. And yeah, that was just that part of the world. So as long as you could, but then when we took those to other parts of the world, some of them were there, some of them weren't. So but that's suppose OpenQuest treatment of magic and religion.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about other sort of D100 systems, can I mention Mithras and Mythic Britain?
You can.
Or specifically Mythic Britain, where the only magic, okay, in that it's its own system, but the only magic is shamanism.
Right.
Which is a pretty interesting approach. So, of course, you could do that with OpenQuest, just restrict the list of spells quite. My
favourite one, if I was just to quickly handball OpenQuest, would be just say, you've all got, this is why the quick magic, the one magic system works.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just say, you've got a certain amount of magic that you've picked up from here, there, and other. You like Russian folklore heroes, they have magic just coming out, and they're known for being able to leap over, and the Celts as well.
The various heroic feats and things.
Yeah, they have magic, but there's no sort of big discussions because they're part of this religion. And
yes, I can swim up a waterfall. Yeah, don't tell me that's not magic.
And you can just do that with the personal magic system, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it falls flat on its face because you have to roll first to cast your spell. So, let's just quick have a talk about. I've touched on religion, and that's one of the things as well about the religious system. It is as well quite different religion. I did have a quite deep look at it. Previous other deep percentile games, mainly that game that has runes in it. They present religion as being a series of you worship a deity. Here's the history of the deity. Here's the skills associated. Here's the magic. In OpenQuest, what I've done with you'll see this in the example, is religions. They come in two types. There's that model, which is what I call dedicated religions, where you worship one god because you're trying to be like them, and you learn their personal magic. So if you're a warrior, you worship the warrior god, and that's what you're doing because it's dedicated. But if you're not, what I found that model for fails is when you've got people who they're not taking religion that seriously, but they'll take a bit from here for a general pathonym of deity that their culture worships. So if you go back to the Anglo-Saxons and the worshipping of the saints, you have a religion where sort of like you get a bit of magic from all the saints, and you worship, and you perhaps pick up by sort of calling upon a certain saint, and then you've got a general sort of sense of sort of God's miraculous abilities to protect you from evil and that sort from one big major deity. So if you and the same with the sort of the Norse,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good important point to capture. I think here. So again, this applies to the Norse. It also applies to the Romans. Most people, you wouldn't say, "Oh yes, I worship this deity." They might have a patron deity or something. They might not. But you're saying, well, you know what? I'm going to war now. I'll make a sacrifice to Mars.
Yeah.
Oh, to get to this war, I need to sail across the sea. I'll sacrifice to Neptune. Oh, now I've got my spoils of war. I need to do things in trade. I'm going to, sacrifice to Mercury. And so it goes on.
So it's a big thing in OpenQuest Thursday at the moment in the game we're playing there. The players, they're not even initiates of what we call the Imperial Way, which is the empire worship system. It's very similar, taking a leaf out of the Romans. So they have this Pantheon, you have the celestial emperor, who's the chief deity. You have the queen, the queen mother, who is his mum, she's the chief female deity. And then you've got the 5 emperors, these 5 divine emperors who came after the first emperor and are responsible for various war, farming, entertainment. I can't remember. Oh, law. And the players could get magic from each of those, and they can also, as I say, dedicate themselves. And if they dedicate, they have a different cult lights up with more magic. So, but the big thing is the players at the moment, and this is what I found when I played through Quest in early editions. And the new edition, they are very much, you start off as an initiative, but you didn't. So the players would sort of like rumble around and kind of go, a bit directionless about what magic system they wanted to pick up on. And at the moment, I've put them in, said, you guys, your characters are aspiring to become initiates the Imperial Way. So you're in this special sort of holding sort of rank called aspirants. It's covered in the quick start, explain about it more.
Yeah.
But the idea that you still all have a shared, you have a shared culture and you have a shared sorts of religion. And I just thought it makes it a lot easier for players to sort of rationalize. And then if you want to go deep into it, they dedicate and the rest of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good way of doing it. And of course, going back to, again, sort of actual historical takes on religion, again, I'll pick on the Romans because, of course, I'm reading up on that a lot now. So there's 2 really types. I suppose there's 2 ways you could think of in terms of an RPG in Magic. So one would be going through, becoming an official priest of a particular god, a Flamen. But usually that actually also goes with, alongside, administrative rank, official rank. This is an open public office that someone would hold simultaneously with being a general or an emperor or something even. But where I quite like that is, okay, so one thing I really like about that is certainly the key skill for sort of religious magic in OpenQuest is probably influence. That seems to sit together with that almost perfectly. But there's another path, which is, and that's probably going to actual getting, big lots of divine magic rather than very individual spells, which you get with this official thing. And that would be going down the path of basically joining a mystery cult.
Right, yeah.
Which people might or might not do. So, for example, again, in the Roman Emperor, big mystery cults coming on in various times. So you're starting off, there's the cult of Isis was widespread. There's cults that were outlawed, such as cults dedicated to Dionysus or cults dedicated to Magna Mater, the Great Mother. And then, of course, later on in the Empire's history, there's the cult to Mithras.
Yeah, so
these mystery cults are kind of a big deal there, I think, as well.
I know the magic system divine. It allows you as well, if you decide you want to become an initiate of one of these mystery cults, or must say cult in, by the way, in OpenQuest has a specific meaning. I'll go on to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mystery religions that you, as long as they're friendly, or your main other religion doesn't find out that you're a member, it's okay to do so. So you could be in different cults but the thing is, one thing I've also thought about is that each religion has its worshippers' duties, the things that it expects you to do. It'll set also adventures based upon that, and to advance in that you have to live up to that. So going back to what I said about cults in OpenQuest, the word cult, and this is mainly because over recent years I've had a bit of a morbid fixation with real life cults. People like the cult Davinian from the Waco, Texas Waco massacre, the Voganishi cult, which I've been watching on Netflix. Forget what the series is called. And basically religions that are created by a guru, usually a very strong personality, who then get basically the whole idea is it all goes to them. And rather than it be a two-way street where you gain something from being basically benign. This is a rather malign system where this cult, you join the cult either because they trick you or through force, and you're expected to give blood and sacrifice and your time and to the hierarchy and ultimately to the deity that you're worshipping. So it has a very specific, because without getting too in depth and fiddly sounding, it's basically all the enemy cults.
But I could see, for example, the cult of Magna Mater being that type of cult.
Right.
I mean, as well, even if I was going for Mithras, of course, there's also, well, it's a dualistic religion. There's also Ahriman.
Right. Is that who's that?
It was basically the devil figure.
Ah, right. Right. So, yes. So I'm just trying to think where we're up to with this. So we talked about the kind of sprinted through all this. We talked about so when you start playing, as a player, where you start with this with personal magic, and then as you go through the game, depending on what choices your referee has made about what other types of magic's available, and there's lots of guidance, in the rule book about this. There's the example setting you can have a look at. There's also a chapter in the referee's guide, but it's quite important to get a handle. And I don't want to make it sound too. It's all covered. It's all straightforward, but because it's a fantasy game, and once you kind of get a handle with it, and as I say, there's lots of guidance on this and examples. That's what makes OpenQuest a bit special. So it gives your players various routes, and as I call the types of magic pathways, because eventually they take you from the whole zero to hero thing of starting off as an adventurer with a couple of spells, and depending on what path you end up. If with divine, this is something I'm new to third edition, because I always thought, you see it in D&D, the sort of the expert, basic expert, and then immortal finally. This whole path of zero to deity. It's hinted at, but not really fully explained in RuneQuest. And I've always found that a bit. There's been a few attempts at it, but I thought, right, that's very nice and simple. Have the end game for various magician type. So if you're a shaman, it's you go over the veil and you become a great spirit. So this is personal magic at the end of that one. And if you take the wise, which is the expert in personal magic, you become one with the real world. You literally become a living sort of expression of magic. And then the divine users, you either you ascend.
Yes.
Ascend to the holes of the gods, which is where the plane of existence where the gods all live. And there's two ways to do that. You can either become a sort of a guardian of your Pantheon that you worshipped all your life. You join as a guardian and become a deity within Pantheon that you followed, or if you've got a bit more wildly travelled and your beliefs, you become a deity of your own right, independent of other Pantheons and the rest of it. And finally, the sorcerers, when they get to the end of the road, they've learned all about the laws of magic and wielded it. They transcend again. They transcend their mortal shells and become beings of pure magical energy. So there is a definite end game that you can play out in OpenQuest.
And you've got the idea of you play maybe 1 or 2 sessions and then retire that character, isn't it? Sort of.
Yes, yeah. I state that anybody's going, what should you do then? It's like, no, that is the end. I'm very big on role playing games and I find for structuring campaigns that you have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And at any stage you review things with your players. So OpenQuest, so this is it. This is why we've spoken about magic, as I'm sure we'll look at other sections of the rules. But getting a handle on magic is important because OpenQuest is all about magic and belief systems. and the rest of it. So, anything else to add to that?
No, I think that's. I mean, we've done quite a lot here, haven't we?
Yeah, I was just looking at the clock, and me and Paul agreed that we half an hour to 40 minutes was a good length for these things.
Yeah, and then we went on for an hour last time, didn't we?
Yeah.
So,
So this time,
don't trust us.
Yeah. So I've got to look at the clock there. So that's it. Okay. Well, that's it for now, and we'll do another one of these a couple of weeks to a month's time. Okay. Thanks very much, Paul.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Newt. It's good to be on here again.
Okay. Take care now, and I'll see you all later.
See you on OpenQuest Thursday.
Yes.